What's up, y'all? Today we're going to talk about a couple of quick tips, tricks, whatever we want to call it, for the Irish flute. Some things that if you're a beginner just starting out, maybe be able to refine your embouchure, get a little bit better at that tone. Let's talk about the first one, which is just working on the head joint itself. And you can spend, well, you don't want to spend hours doing this, but spending 30 seconds, 5 minutes, somewhere in that variety, just going like this. You don't have the rest of the flute to worry about. It's the easiest note that you can get. And just listen for that embouchure, because what you're hoping for is a nice, clean kind of tone. However, when you're starting out, it's probably going to sound a bit more like this, where you're just sort of hunting and fishing for it. And as you get a little closer, you can get that tone, but it's still kind of breathy. And ultimately, you want it to just be as clean and as focused as possible. And that's where just having this thing out while you're sitting at your desk, while you're, probably not while you're eating, don't want it to get all gross, but just having it available and easily accessed when you've got a few minutes. Kind of the car whistle theory that I've been such a big proponent of. But having this available and just spending time kind of rolling it in and rolling it out to find where that sweet spot is. You can hear that variability of tone that you get, and focusing and finding just that one good spot where it's about as clean as you can get. And what you're really looking for is not only good tone, but you're trying to lock in what does that feel like with this thing on it. How does your face move? How do your face muscles move when you get the tone that you're looking for? Ultimately, you're trying to do this sort of thing where you're making your face get all goofy like that, but trying to remember how does it feel with the flute against your lip there, so that way you'll be able to just lock in that muscle memory. So listen, but also feel. Understand what that feels like when it sounds good. Then, when we're putting the flute together, it's a matter of figuring out where does that embouchure hole go? Where does it line up? And what I always start with is I look down the flute and I can see sort of right down the middle of all these holes. That's sort of an imaginary line that I'm looking for, and I'm going to start, by default, I'm going to put the outside edge of the embouchure hole on that line. And keeping it all nice and even like that is a good starting point. It may not be your ending point, because you may need to adjust that to fit your style and your face and your hands and everything else, fit it a little bit better, but at least that'll give you a good place to start drawing that imaginary line down the barrel. And then, how does it sound? If it sounds good, you're probably in the right spot. If not, same thing as with just holding the embouchure, the head joint itself, roll it in and out and see how that affects your tone. It's obviously going to affect your tuning. I'm sure you just heard it there. It's going to make it go flat as you roll towards you and sharp as you roll away. We're a little less concerned with the tuning than we are tone. Tuning can be adjusted by moving the tuning slide. So we're not really too worried about that, just thinking about good quality tone alongside good breath control, being able to hit that tone and that quality note for a consistent amount of time. Now, the next tip I would say is when you're in this setup here, when it's all put together, aim for that C sharp. Same concept as with the head joint, it's the easiest note to get. So all you really have to worry about here is balance, is the thing stable. You can hear how it goes from refined to a little bit more airy to more refined. Find that sweet spot between the instrument itself and your face muscles to where that it really locks in as the most clear possible tone that you can get. And that's going to evolve as you play, of course, but for right now, get it as clean as you possibly can and try to really remember what that feels like, what it sounds like too, but what it feels like to your face. And the last tip during this little sort of embouchure practice session is the bottom D. How does that sound? You can hear there's a lot of different options to that note, from kind of plain and a little bit more airy to very, very sharp and growly, where it's just, really you can bear down on it. And change that character of that note. It's the most flexible note. It's also the hardest one to get, which is why it begs a little bit more practice than any other note. Keep in mind, we're not talking about playing tunes here. We're just talking about getting good embouchure. I've mentioned this before, but your embouchure ought to be like 90% of your practice time, particularly when you're first starting out. And really, even if you've been at it a while, it's helpful to just sit down and get good tone and remember what that feels like. Because I think we can all dive in with tunes and we kind of forget about some of those basics. And next thing we know, we're reinforcing bad habits. which happens to everybody. But if you can pump the brakes and specifically spend a little bit of time getting that good tone and experimenting with it, and learning what works well for that particular instrument, I think you're going to get a lot more out of it that way. Let me know if these tips are of any value to you. I hope so. I hope this is worthwhile. Spend some time with the embouchure. I can't stress that enough. Tunes will come, and honestly, you can play those in the whistle and translate that over the flute pretty easily. But spend most of your time getting good, solid tone, because it's super vital. It's the most important thing. All right, guys. See y'all in the next one. Cheers.